courage, Miss...
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Greetings. I am Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, and I'm at your service.
Rule number 1, never carry a gun. Let go.
Born in Edinburgh, Scotland in August 1930, the son of poor working-class parents, Sean Connery grew up at the height of the Depression. He was still a young boy when the family's dire financial straits forced him to get a job.
When I was 9, I started to work, and I used to walk to work in the dark. My mother went to work at the same time, and then I used to go straight from there at 6 in the morning and go straight to school. In 1940, we were moved out of the schools into private houses, which was wonderful. I never went back to school. I just left. And it's only later how much I kind of regretted how much I had dodged a bullet in school. But I got a horse and cart, and I delivered the milk and coal, potatoes and all that kind of stuff. I never had that sense of being genuinely poor. It was only later when I sort of got away and went to the Navy at 16 that I was really conscious of how different everything was in other places, how much better it could be.
Connery spent 3 miserable years in the Navy before being discharged on medical grounds. He developed ulcers. He was back on the street with no job qualifications.
I was quite skinny, although wiry, and I started doing bodybuilding. And I went down to London for the Mr. Universe contest, representing Scotland in the tall man's class.
After placing second in the Mr. Universe contest, Connery was offered a spot on a professional soccer team, but chose instead to pursue acting. Now in his early 20s, his first real acting job was as a member of the male chorus in South Pacific.
They asked me to do some handsprings and handstands and things, and one had to look like an American, which I suppose I could pass for.
Connery's role in South Pacific led in turn to early work in the theatre and eventually television.
I never felt comfortable in that sort of BBC situation because I was not one of the old boy network. I didn't go to any of the public schools, and I did not particularly appear English. But I certainly could have played hundreds of parts that never came my way.
Connery made several films during the late 1950s, but few advanced his career. Then, in 1958, Lana Turner chose him as her co-star in the high-profile feature Another Time, Another Place.
I liked her enormously, I must say, but the press made such a thing of the fact that she was 42 and I was 28.
As Connery's career heated up, he embarked on his first trip to Hollywood. Disney Studios had cast him in the fanciful love story Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Why am I handshaking?
While pursuing Hollywood, Connery also worked in the theatre.
We were doing Arthur Miller and Rod Serling and Anna Karenina.
Alexis.
Oh, I can't stand this. I must touch you, my mouth on your cheek. I can't stand it, and I want you. You don't love me, not the way I love you. All you think about is your child.
Connery's performance in Anna Karenina would propel him into one of the greatest opportunities of his life. The producers of the celebrated spy thrillers by novelist Ian Fleming gave him an audition for the coveted role of James Bond.
At the time, Ian Fleming wanted Cary Grant, and but at $1 million to make the movie, I would take care of Cary Grant, and they would have no movie.
I admire your courage, Miss...
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
James Bond became an international sex symbol, transforming Sean Connery into the most famous movie star in the world.
It was a phenomenon then. It was around the same time as the Beatles. The difference was that they had 4 of them to be able to deal with it.
At the height of Bond mania, 32-year-old Sean Connery married his first wife, the actress Diane Cilento, and they had a son, Jason.
everywhere you go. You can't be by yourself at all, really, because there's always someone coming out from behind a tree or big eyes from everywhere. And I think that, I mean, I feel it myself. I don't like being stared at all the time.
I mean, you can't believe, once it started to take over, how difficult it was then to do anything or go anywhere. Even making a movie. They were in the toilet with the cameras and stuff. Now, I can't think of anything less interesting for anybody, unless there's something rather strange about them, to want to see me in whatever stage of being in the toilet.
Between bouts as James Bond, Connery managed to explore new roles in several very different films. He was growing as an actor and expanding the range of his portrayals.
It wasn't a conscious step, it was an awareness that I would have to keep getting my feet wet in the directions that my instinct would take me to be able to get some kind of counterbalance to the situation with the Bond.
The Hill, directed by Sidney Lumet, who would later direct Sean Connery in 4 other films, gained for the actor serious critical praise. Connery played an officer unjustly court-martialed.
I think he is one of the most complex men I've ever known. He was using himself. He was really using his own innards. It wasn't character. That kind of a rebel, that kind of a totally balanced man, in the sense of this is just, this is unjust, that very clear line that character draws in terms of his behavior and other people's behavior. And Sean is like that.
I'm not sure what Sidney means in terms of the complexities. I always attempt to make everything as simple as possible, whatever it is, whatever the character is, whatever the storytelling is. One of the few things I really believe in is education. Maybe because I had been sort of neglected in my own past, I think, probably.
In 1971, Connery agreed to reprise the role of James Bond in Diamonds Are Forever in order to donate his entire $1.2 million fee to his newly established Scottish International Education Trust. For over 20 years, the Trust has been supporting education, the arts, and young athletes with grants totaling over £80,000 each year.
The idea is that anybody who has any kind of talent whatsoever in Scotland can apply, and they will be of some assistance if they merit it. Male, female, age is no concern.
Part of Connery's deal in making what he thought would be his last Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever, allowed him to produce his own pictures. The first of these, The Offence.
That was the first of the pictures, Tantalon Films, I set up, and I got Sidney to direct it, and I produced it with my company. We shot the film in 4 weeks, including a week of rehearsals.
The Offence was indeed a daring role for Connery, who played a working-class detective convinced of the guilt of an alleged child molester, as played by Ian Bannon. The Offence came out in 1973, and despite good reviews, did poorly at the box office. The studio that had released it was more focused on the promotion of Connery as Bond. Connery's professional troubles could not have come at a worse time. The same year he made The Offence, his marriage to Diane Cilento ended in divorce, and his father died. Of all Connery's films in the 1970s, none perhaps was as popular as The Man Who Would Be King. John Huston directed Connery and his close friend Michael Caine in an epic tale of 2 British Army sergeants who became free spirits in the search for ancient treasure.
It was a 22-page short story by Rudyard Kipling, and the 2 characters were so well conceived that we changed scenes when we were making the movie, and it didn't make any difference because the concept was that it was one complete man, and it was based on friendship.
Back to back with The Man Who Would Be King, Connery played one of the most whimsical leads of his career as Robin, opposite Audrey Hepburn's Marion.
She was highly nervous, which was understandable, totally professional, and I must say I liked her.
By 1978, when Connery and director Michael Crichton made The Great Train Robbery, Sean had already starred in 33 films.
The character in The Train Robbery is a rogue, a charming rogue. And there actually aren't very many charming rogues in the world. There are plenty of slimy rogues and nasty rogues, and there are plenty of charming people that are just charming, but a true charming rogue is a rare thing, and Sean is one of the people who can do it.
By the 1980s, Connery's performance at the box office was totally unpredictable. He took risks. Some paid off, some did not. Incredibly, in 1982, Connery agreed to play James Bond one last time. It had been 21 years since Dr. No.
Never say never made a fortune, worldwide, I guess, whatever. I think he was too serious, and I think Sean knew that the formula that really made Bond was not working, because this was not the most pleasant, like I say, situation for Sean.
I think I stopped after that. I really was pretty sickened by the making of the movie. It wasn't the best experience. And then I don't know how long, my wife will tell how long I was out. I didn't do, I think, 2 years or 2.5 years I didn't do a film.
Sean Connery and his wife Michelin have homes in different parts of the world, but their estate here along the southern coast of Spain has been their primary residence for over 2 decades.
When I first came here, you wouldn't believe how different it was. It was much, much more primitive.
It was really in a terrible state, but we fell in love with the ambience, because there was an ambience, even though it was totally derelict. It was an ambience, and we loved it. You have a nice view here.
For over 2 decades, Sean and Michelin have managed to create a private and peaceful life for their family in Spain. But it hasn't always been easy.
It's a very heavy thing. We cannot do what we want to do. We cannot go and have walks in places and so on. And, anonymous, it's impossible. With Sean, it's impossible.
Sean has 1 son, Jason, by his previous marriage, and Michelin 2 sons, Stéphane and Olivier, and a daughter, Marisha.
To be able to give anything or to do anything, you have to begin at home. If you're an emotional cripple or useless, you're not going to be much use to anybody else. And so if you can get your house in order and yours kind of part of your priorities in order, you've got much more chance of doing what you want to be doing, and certainly be much better to be with.
Since Sean's return to the film world in the 1980s, his professional life has flourished like never before, and in 1988 Sean Connery was nominated for an Academy Award for The Untouchables. It was long overdue recognition for the actor, who was essentially self-taught and had gotten his start in the chorus line of South Pacific 35 years earlier.
For somebody who did not have any of the qualifications scholastically, it would seem to be the obvious choice if you think about it, because as an actor, I then have to acquire from then on as much as possible. And what do I have? I have only myself, or my instrument, which is me.
That could have been Sean talking to me. That scene was an older man talking to a younger man, seeing his hurt and understanding that. That's why Sean is so successful, because he has great humanity, I believe. Here's this mega star, but there's humanity, in everything he does.
I must say, I wasn't convinced that I would get the Oscar. It didn't seem that important to me. And I have to admit that when I did receive it, it did seem very important. I was caught with it.
I thank you all sincerely.
In the last decade, among Sean's many starring roles, he has portrayed a medieval monk in the Name of the Rose, the dynamic father of Indiana Jones and Spielberg's epic, and a modern-day medicine man in The Amazon. In Rising Sun, he played a Zen-like detective, and in Just Cause, Sean Connery was a lawyer driven to serve justice. In the 1996 blockbuster The Rock, Sean assumed the character of the only man to have ever escaped from Alcatraz.
I started thinking about the leading men that we have now in contemporary film. Who holds the screen that way, where you really cannot take your eyes off of them, whether they're speaking or not? And I can't think of anybody who has the same combination of qualities, where it's strength, it's masculine, it's powerful, it's thoughtful, it's intelligent, it's very terrific to look at. I don't think there is anybody that is his peer.
Alec Baldwin starred with Connery in the highly successful Hunt for Red October.
I was just beginning working in the movies, and I was kind of conscious of being on screen with people. And I thought, Sean Connery, I thought, well, he's got no hair, and he's kind of old now. Maybe I'll have a chance. I'll be on screen with this guy. He showed up the first day of shooting for him, and he had this incredible steel-colored gray, salt and pepper hairpiece, and this beard and this uniform. And I thought, I'm dead. The guy still is the best-looking guy you've ever seen in your life.
It's like when the guy phones up and says you've been voted the sexiest man alive. Well, what are you supposed to reply to that, eh?
Sean has received many unusual tributes. He was given an honorary doctorate at St.Andres University, as well as being awarded two of the most prestigious titles France can bestow, the Commander of Arts and Letters and the Legion of Honor. Perhaps the award that had the most meaning for Sean came from his native Scotland. The man who had once delivered milk on the streets of Edinburgh now came home to receive one of the greatest tributes Scotland confers on anyone, the freedom of the city.
And nobody'd had it for 20 years. And Prince Charles made it known that he was interested in receiving it and didn't get it. I went to the Usher Hall, and I said, well, the only thing is that I insist that the people where I come from, Fountainbridge, are certainly going to be there. And they couldn't get them all in the theatre. There was 2,000 there, and there was about 10,000, 15,000 outside in the street. It's very, very moving. It's really an amazing honor. It's 500 years, and the people who have received it, guys like Garibaldi, Benjamin Franklin, Churchill. What really added to it was that it was the people in Edinburgh and then in turn in Scotland who voted on it.
When I was first informed about the possibility of receiving the Freedom of Edinburgh, I was flattered and thrilled. I knew then I would not be able to express my full thanks adequately in words. I can tell you how I feel. I feel like I've gone 15 rounds with Mike Tyson, but I won.
I don't think you ever get any kind of final satisfaction. I don't think that's in the cards. I don't know anybody who has that. They'd be pretty boring, I should think, and not the kind of company I'd be wanting to be keeping.
The boy from the tenements had become a man of profound dimensions. Despite having made nearly 70 films, he retains his down-to-earth charm. Sean Connery is truly at the height of his career, more popular, vigorous and unpredictable than ever before.